no matter how many great jobs or how many accolades or anything like that, I'm never done working. I'm never at my best, period. And that keeps you humble. I have confidence. I have confidence in how hard I've worked to get to where I am, how hard I will continually work to stay where I am and get to where I want to be. And even when I'm there, you never stop working. And that's the greatest thing I think my dad taught me.
We all have those moments where we need a little encouragement to get through our day. Someone to remind us that we are not alone. Find peace. Embrace joy. Seek God daily. Welcome to Jesus Calling Stories of Faith. Our show today features pro rodeo announcer, Ride TV host, and professional team roper Anthony Lucia. Anthony was born into a family whose name was known widely across the rodeo scene. His father was a well-known performer, and Anthony began joining him in performances at age 8. As Anthony's star began to rise in rodeo competitions and as a budding rodeo announcer, he began to move out of the shadow of his father's fame and into his own identity. As a result, his relationship with his father became strained as he sought to make his own way in the world. But through God's grace, they found their way back to each other.
My name's Anthony Lucia from Weatherford, Texas, and I'm a professional rodeo announcer, a television broadcaster. I do a lot of broadcasts for live Western sports, live events as well. Professional team roper, former professional trick roper, and I still trick rope every once in a while. Was able to perform at the National Finals Rodeo on 4 different occasions. I was nominated 3-time PRCA Entertainer of the Year, and then I moved into talking a lot, and that's my true passion, is talking about the sport and the people that I love, and that's rodeo and anything Western sports. I grew up just west of Weatherford in a little town called Garner, and so a typical day would be my dad would wake me up. I like to sleep, and I wasn't necessarily a morning person, but I learned to be because my dad grew up in the day and age where if you don't work, you don't eat. And my dad grew up from the streets of Minneapolis with nothing. I mean, in a poverty-stricken part of the town, and he worked from the time he was 8 years old, had a job of some sorts to help his mom. He had a single mom, and so my dad I'm so grateful that he taught us work ethic. He did entertaining and professional rodeo. He started out as a barrel man. He was a clown, and he transferred into strictly doing dress acts is what they call them, and basically, so he had a monkey named Whiplash that he trained to ride a border collie, and the border collie would herd up wild Barbados sheep, and then he also would train, he had some amazing trick horses. In fact, the horses' names were, the first one was In His Glory, In God's Glory, and then the second one, when that one passed away, God brought another horse in, and these horses had physical handicaps. They were swayback, and they were actually going to be put down, and my dad, thanks be to God, was able to save them, and then because he had such a way with animals, he was able to train them to do amazing things that at first thought these horses with a deformity wouldn't be able to do. But because of my dad's relationship with animals, because he was able to communicate with them in essence, he was able to make them and teach them and bring them their full potential, and they were able to do amazing things. And so he performed all over the country, every major rodeo stock show, from the Calgary Stampede to the Madison Square Garden in New York. I mean, we've been everywhere, and so that's what I grew up in. I grew up being in entertainment and being around animals. You know, in the Bible it talks about we have dominion over the animals, and my dad took that for real. So he believed that he could train an animal to do anything. And it wasn't a forceful training. It was a training that I'm gonna figure out what this animal likes. I'm gonna figure out what makes this animal tick, what his pressure points are, what helps this animal do what he can do, and Dad would get the best out of any animal he had. It seemed like when we were home, there was always a plethora of things to do, and so we worked all day. We'd stop to eat lunch and then go back at it till 5 or 6 o'clock, and then I was able to pretty much, if I wanted to go to the creek and spend time in the creek, and I was explorer, adventurer, and I loved it, like finding wild animals, and I would stalk wild animals and like deer and raccoons and stuff like that. Raccoons aren't that hard to stalk. Just put food out and sit. But that was my childhood. And then when we would leave, we would drive for the hundreds of miles that we went, however far we had to go to get to the rodeo. And from there, it was pretty much the same kind of day, getting ready for that night's performance. And whether it was going to luncheons with my dad and being around adults or doing interviews with the media talking about the animals and different things like that. And so we always had a job. And so it was a lot of very special time growing up with my dad. He was a hard worker, he was a hard man, but my goodness, I wouldn't be where I am today without him. I mean, we grew up 35 minutes from town. And I mean, I went to church on Wednesdays and Sundays, and that's pretty much the only time we went to town. And it's not like we were countrified and, living in the backwoods, but I didn't have any friends. So I learned to trick rope. I taught myself how to trick rope, and it became a passion of mine, wanting to be the very best at trick roping, because that was another thing my dad taught me, was if you're gonna do something, be your best and try to be the best, because don't just settle for mediocrity. And so that's translated into every aspect of my life. And I was drawn to the animals, but they were a part of us. Rodeo is a part of me. It's not just something, I love the horses and the bulls and the cowboys and the fans and the cowgirls. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of what's molded me into the man that I am today, and I have a long ways to go to be the man I want to be, but I've got to start, and that's because of my dad and because of the people of rodeo, because the animals that are in rodeo and all Western sports. And as I got older, the trick roping was fun, but I wanted to rope things that moved. I wanted to test that and see how good I could be. And when I was 19, I got my first rope horse. And when I was 16, I'd started to train some young horses, and we'd go to the sale barn and buy some unbroke horses. So I had this rope horse that I'd saved up and bought, but I didn't have anywhere to go and compete and to really utilize his talents. And so we would rope sheep every once in a while, because we always had sheep. So I'd go on the pasture and we'd rope sheep, and of course Dad didn't like that very much, and so I'd only do that whenever he went to town and when I knew he was going to be gone for a while. And then we'd just go ride, and we would just spend time together, and we'd ride to the far back of our place, and I would just step off him, and he would just be eating grass, and I would just talk to God. And I can honestly say that God has communicated to me through horses. And showing his love and showing his unconditional love. And I'm getting a bit emotional because I'm thinking about my very first rope horse. His name was Peanut. And I know that's a silly name, but I named him Peanut. When I first got him, he didn't come with a name, and so he didn't have papers. He was a great horse. There's been more times than I can count that at a point where I was lost, or at a point where I was questioning, God, what are you doing? Because I felt like there were so many times, and I'm sure every young person can attest to this, but there's times in life when you're young where you have so many things going on, so many things you want to do, so many things you're not able to do, and you're like, what am I here for? What's my purpose? What am I here for? And more times than not, a nuzzle by that horse, or a soft look, or there's been times where I'd be on the ground just crying, just dealing with a lot of different things. And our family was very tumultuous growing up, and so our family was being attacked a lot. And so there was times where my horse where my dad struggled with telling us that he loved us, struggled with a hug, or struggled with, just hey, good job. He struggled with that. But God used horses to tell me and to show me his love. And Peanut is still to this day one of the greatest blessings that I've ever received. Growing up, especially when I started trick roping, was very adamant, because if you're 9 or 10 years old and you can trick rope, man, you're going to get some attention. And I started actually performing in rodeos when I was 10 or 11, or actually I was 11. And so everybody, you're 11 years old and you can do all this amazing things with a rope. People are just like, oh my gosh, you're so awesome. Well, that could go to a kid's head. I mean, it's just no different than sports, or somebody stands out on the basketball court or the football field. But my dad was very conscious of not letting me get a big head. So as I got older, I became more involved in my dad's business and getting him jobs, getting him sponsors. So I took on the role of, hey, this is Whiplash the Cowboy Monkey. He's got millions of, when YouTube first came out, he was like the first YouTube star. We were on a tour, I was there with my dad, and the producer of the rodeo was like, hey, we have early morning media at 5 o'clock, and I could trick rope. And they're like, can you come talk to the news anchor, trick rope, maybe teach him how to trick rope? And I'm 15 years old. And he's like, and I'm gonna make you a star. That's what he said. And my dad told me, he used a few choice words, but he goes, that stuff of them saying they'll make you a star, you need to have them make you some money. And so, but I'm like, well, I'll make sure my chores are done. I'm gonna go do early morning media. And so basically to explain that is we would go to these different buildings all across America, and all the news stations for that city would come in that morning to promote that night's rodeo and the next night's rodeo. And so I would trick rope, and these cameras I would do different, they would be set up in stations. I would trick rope with the news anchors and joke around with them and tell them, well, tonight you're gonna get to see some of the very best cowboys and cowgirls, amazing bucking bulls and horses, and not only that, you're gonna get to see Whiplash, the cowboy monkey. It is whether you're 6, 66, or 96, you need to come to the rodeo because it's a true family event. The whole family's gonna have fun. Make sure you're here by 6:30 when the doors open and enjoy a great night of America's original sport. So I'm learning how to do this, and at the time I'm just like, this is so fun, because I'm getting to trick rope, I'm getting to be on camera a little bit, and like I said, I've always been, I was raised to be a showman, and that's how I got into television per se. I never knew at the time that it would turn into what I'm doing now. So I started to learn how to announce when I was probably 16, 17 years old, and never in a million years thought I would be a rodeo announcer. Never even crossed my mind. I'm just doing this so I can trick rope. Because I want to be a world champion team roper. I wanted to be a world champion bronc rider when I was a little kid. I wanted to be a cowboy. I've always wanted to be a cowboy. I love everything about being a cowboy, and I love everything about what a cowboy represents, and just the grit and the try and the work that goes into being a cowboy. Whether you're an everyday cowboy working on a ranch, or whether you're a world champion cowboy like Tyson Durfee or Trevor Brazile, those guys, the amount of work and the amount of sacrifice they put into being good at that is so honorable to me, because I know how much it takes. With trick roping, I wanted to be the best trick roper. I wanted to create the most exciting trick roping act. I wanted to be the best trick roper. I wanted to be the best showman. And so I just busted my butt to get good at that. Well, then team roping. I went all in on, as much as I could with my schedule, I went all in on team roping. I didn't want to just be a jackpot team roper and go here and there. I wanted to be a world champion. So I surrounded myself with the very best guys. I spent hours in the practice pen, and I was able to accomplish quite a few things with team roping. Well, when I was probably 19 or 20 years old, my dad goes, as much as you talk, he said, you'd be a good rodeo announcer. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I kind of took it as a little bit of an insult, like, just because I can talk good, which is product of what you've taught me my whole life, like that was almost a bad thing. I kind of had in my mind that was a bad thing, that I've always been a talker. So it kind of, like trick roping, that was my own identity, because I didn't want to just be Monkey Boy. People call me Monkey Boy, and it didn't bother me because Whiplash was cool. If I'm going to be associated with a monkey, I'd rather be associated with one that's a cowboy and can ride a dog than one that's in a zoo, But I hated it in a way, because I was Tommy Lucia's son, which was I wish I would have known then how big of an honor that was to be my dad's son, as I do now. And there was times that I wished that I wasn't in my dad's shadow. There was times that I wished I was in the monkey's shadow. There was times that when I was young, I wanted to make my own path. I want to be Anthony Lucia. I don't want to be Tommy's boy, which hurts my heart to say that, because I was so blessed. I still am so blessed to have my dad. And now I take so much pride when somebody goes, are you Tommy Lucia's son? Yes. And I guess I hope that I'm not the only youngster that ever felt that way.
We'll be right back with the moving story of how Anthony, as he struggled to find his own identity, separated from his father, and what ultimately brought them back together again after a brief message from Jesus Calling.
Share His love. Share his inspiration. Share his strength. Share his joy. Share the peace found in his presence. Jesus Calling.
It seemed like there was a period when I moved out. I mean, it's kind of what did it. And looking back, I see now why he reacted the way that he did, because he thought I was leaving him. I was his last boy. I was his last kid. And I wanted to go do my own thing and still help him, but I didn't want to live there. I still wanted to help him I wasn't just gonna, thanks a lot, Dad, peace out. I would never leave him alone. And, you know, I always wanted to help him, but he saw me moving out as, I don't want no part of him anymore. And he took that completely the wrong way. And he even admitted it when he got older. But it was one of those things, it's like, no, I'm not leaving you. I still love you more than you're my favorite human in the world, but I need to do this. And so our relationship was tumultuous. And whenever I say tumultuous, I mean, we had a lot of really great times. There was a lot of struggle, a lot of different things that we went through with my growth and even his growth. And when he was probably 2 years before he passed away, something clicked in his brain. And it was like, I'm just gonna be proud of my sons. Every one of our relationships with all my brothers, with my dad, something clicked in his brain, and it was amazing. He had never seen me team rope. I had been roping for, 8 years. Had never seen me team rope, not one time. And he came and watched me rope. He had never seen me announce. He came and watched me announce. He would ask about my team roping every time, like, how's your team roping going? Like, curious, like, and then at announcing jobs, he'd be like, how did it go? Well, it went pretty good. I co-announced with this guy. You should have knocked him on his butt. I'm so grateful. I mean, my dad loved God, but he never fully embraced his love. He never fully embraced his grace, his forgiveness. And I know that because of a lot of my dad's mistakes, he felt so much guilt, and guilt creates anger. It does. And that guilt breaks a lot of relationships. But I felt like my dad finally got fully right with God. And he had accepted his love and his unending grace and his forgiveness. And that translated into all of our relationships. Because no longer did he feel guilty for being too firm. He realized that's a mistake. He apologized for him. And we all moved on. We'd already forgiven him years and years ago. My dad was like my hero. He was my superhero. Yeah, he was hard on us, but he loved us. He taught us so much, and he would have laid down his life in an instant for any one of us. You don't find that in people. You don't just walk down the street and find that. And when he passed away, it's like I'd forgotten everything he taught me at that moment. I forgot that he taught us to, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I forgot that don't feel sorry for yourself, just keep pushing forward. Like, I forgot that all of the lessons that he taught us, now it's time to, whenever I had a problem, deal with it. When I had a question, go to God. When my dad passed away, the first step to me being right was Jesus calling. My dad died on his birthday. I was supposed to go pick him up to go to lunch. He didn't call me back, and so I called her. I got worried, and I found him. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that. The hardest moment of my life was kicking down my dad's door. But that night, as lost as I was, through this book, God reached out and he said, I got you. So that night, I got this book from my dad. It had been in my drawer, hadn't read it. Just kind of breezed through it every once in a while. That night I opened it up to June 1st. That's my dad's birthday, the day he died. And this is what it said. I am involved in each moment of your life. I have carefully mapped out every inch of your journey through this day, even though much of it may feel haphazard. Because the world is in a fallen condition, things always seem to be unraveling around the edges. Expect to find trouble in this day. At the same time, trust that my way is perfect, even in the midst of such messy imperfection. Stay conscious of me as you go through this day, remembering that I will never leave your side. Let the Holy Spirit guide you step by step, protecting you from unnecessary trials and equipping you to get through whatever must be endured. As you trudge through the sludge of this fallen world, keep your mind in heavenly places with me. Thus the light of my presence shines on you, giving you peace and joy that circumstances cannot touch. When I read that night, that gave me momentary peace. As I continued on, this gave me so much wisdom. My dad had been such a compass for me my whole life. Had been you always knew where he stood. I could ask him a question, and I knew the answer before I asked him. And I sometimes didn't like him for it, but I respected him for it every time. And when he passed away, I was done. I didn't know where to, the number one human in my life for the last 30 years is gone. The last 3 years since he's passed away has been probably the 3 biggest years of my growth, spiritually, mentally, emotionally as a man, than my whole life. And when my dad died, I thought, I'm done. But what I didn't realize is that now God was gonna use that, what I saw as a tragedy, as a blessing, for me to turn to Him more. And it took me about 8 months. It took me about 8 months to go, wait a second. Why did God give me such a dad that had so much wisdom and knowledge and taught me so much? Why did He do that if I wasn't supposed to use everything He taught me to live my life? Because at the time when you're doing it, when He's still alive, I'm still getting coaching from Him. I'm still getting that. So you don't realize that it's already inside of you. God's wisdom is already inside of us. We pray for wisdom. It's the greatest gift God could ever give to us, besides obviously salvation. But in the Bible, I mean, how great is the gift of wisdom? Reading the Old Testament, like wisdom is more precious than rubies. And what I didn't realize is that I have that capability. We all have that capability to grow in our lives, in every aspect of our lives, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even physically. My dad taught us to be independent, free-thinking individuals. But when we actually started to do that, it bothered him a bit because we were independent, free-thinking from him. That's still something that fuels my passion and fuels my fire, because I want to be great at whatever I'm doing. Because one, my dad would never settle for anything less. And two, because God didn't create us just to be mediocre. I want to bring people into our world and tell them about the stories, tell them about the people of it, tell them about their families, tell them about their stats, all whilst presenting it in an exciting, entertaining fashion. Being a trick roper, being a team roper, contestant, competitor, doing the media when I was 15 years old, learning how to talk about the sport that I love, not any BS, but true heartfelt passion for the sport and the people of it. That's what led me to rodeo announcing. Rodeo announcing has then opened up to broadcasting. I started a talk show in 2009 called Live with Lucia. And basically it's during the National Finals Rodeo. It was just basically, I was hired to be entertainment at this big trade show at the convention center at the Sands Expo, so that when people came and did their shopping, they could come sit down for an hour and see their favorite competitors and their favorite contestants that are competing at the national finals. And then here's this guy, monkey guy, and at the time I was still monkey guy, talk to them. And so it was rough when we started, and we would get 13 or 15 people watching. But then as the years went on, I kind of learned how to do it better, and I would put more effort into it. Like, because at first I'm like, wait, you guys want me to do a talk show? I mean, I know I said I could do it, but are you sure about this? I have no idea how to do it. But just time, experience, learning how to present something. Well, then next thing I know, we're getting a lot of people for this that are coming in to watch this, people, and the shows got better and everything like that. But when it comes down to it, be the best for God. Be the best to fulfill His purpose for you. Be the best to use the talents that God is giving you. Don't just bury them, like, the parable of the talents. Build them, grow, make them grow and work your butt off to make them grow for God, not for me. It's not me. I still, when I'm announcing, there's times where somebody's like, man, that was so cool what you just said right there. Or after the rodeo, remember when you said that? That was so neat, that was so perfect for that moment. And I'm like, no idea. Because there's times, I'm not joking, I probably shouldn't tell anybody this, my mind goes completely blank, and then something will and it just comes out, and it's amazing. And I'll just, thank you, Father. If I would clear my mind all the way and let God speak through me the entire time, I would probably be the best ever. But unfortunately, we get in God's way a lot of times. But that's where, so with the announcing, transitioning, and I'm still gonna announce rodeos, but there's a lot of opportunity now with Western sports broadcasting. So in a way, I feel like God is moving me in that direction, one, to have a bigger impact, and two, I think He knows a little bit that if I get too big in announcing, that I might get a little bit cocky. When it comes down to it, I'm on this earth to do God's will. God, even today, is changing a little of my direction of where He wants me to be. And that's hard. That's hard for me because I want to be the best this or the best that, and I want to bust my butt to be the best. Well, then God's like, hang on a second. That's great, but I can use you more over here. And so there's a lot of things happening in my career right now that are game changers, and in a great way, and are huge blessings. But it took me, this is still going on today, really. It took me a while to set aside my own goals, to set aside my own pride in what I've worked to build, and go, well, if God wants me there, that's what I got to do.
You can see Anthony Lucia on Live with Lucia on the Ride TV network. Visit ridetv.com for more information about broadcasts in your area. Next time on Jesus Calling Stories of Faith, we speak with photographer and social entrepreneur Jeremy Cowart. As an artist, Jeremy endeavors to use his creativity to put the spotlight on situations of need. He discusses his mission of creating an intersection between empathy and creativity and finding his true purpose.
I just love doing things that actually help people, whether that's telling a story or doing whatever, but it has to also be super creative. When things go bad, we'll always need hands to rebuild, we'll always need money to be given, we'll always need our huge organizations to respond, but we also need innovation and new ideas in times of need, especially with all the technology we have these days. We need innovators, and I like to fill that little gap in times of need. How can I think differently and help people in this situation?
Thank you for watching Jesus Calling Stories of Faith. To learn more about how to keep up with our shows bi-monthly and to listen to our weekly podcast, please visit youtube.com/JesusCallingBook to view and hear previous episodes, and to watch a short informational video about how to access all things Jesus Calling on audio and video formats. Plus, learn how to subscribe to our podcast and video channels. Your subscription helps get the word out to more people who will benefit from these inspirational stories of faith.